Okay, let's get started. Anyone logging in after this will only miss my introduction, which really won't be the end of the world. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to another of our Enterprise Series webinars. And this morning, we're going to be talking about enhancing business growth by driving productivity. There's lots of familiar faces on the delegate list. So many of you are probably familiar with who we are and probably familiar with myself. I'm Esther Carter, and I'm going to be doing some light chairing this morning. But for those of you who are less familiar with who we are Moore Kingston Smith. We're a top 15 audit, tax and advisory firm. We work with lots of different sectors right across the entrepreneurial space, as well as not-for-profit businesses and private clients. And we're also part of More Global, which is an international network with presence in over 100 different countries, so very well placed to help our clients with their international expansion. And we also have an HR consultancy, which one of our panel members is a director of. So enhancing business success by driving productivity. A successful business model really requires invested people and invested leaders as well. And it's essential that your people understand their contribution and how this leads to further business success and growth. And implementing and measuring an effective L&D programme really helps to improve productivity and also has many other benefits, such as improved retention, strengthened company culture, all of which, of course, help to drive growth. So in this webinar, our panel are going to be explaining why measuring productivity really is key for business leaders to increase profitability and business value. And they'll also discuss initiatives that leaders can implement to further drive engagement with their employees. So I'm delighted this morning to be joined by Julya Holden. Julya is a senior learning and development business partner within our HR consultancy. She's a very experienced and pragmatic leader with expertise in learning and development, executive coaching, and operational cultural change strategies. And she has a proven record of designing and implementing strategies that enhance employee engagement, retention, competency, wellness, and overall performance. And who wouldn't want all of those things? So welcome, Julya. And also welcome to James Davenport, who is a partner in our MooreMentum team. And he supports ambitious entrepreneurs who want to proactively grow their business. He helps owner-managed businesses unlock their potential by utilising information, optimising processes, and cultivating innovation, all of which, of course, require an engaged and motivated team to deliver the best possible results. So a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. Please ask questions. This webinar is for you. We want you to get the most out of it, and you'll get the most out of it if you engage and ask the questions that you want answered. Please do ask those questions in the Q&A function. They're much easier to keep track of there, and I will try and weave them in amongst the panel questions. And any unanswered questions we can answer and follow up with you privately after the webinar. The session is being recorded, so please do share with any colleagues or peers who were unable to make it today. So kicking off then, so I think we'll start with you, James, really, just to explore a little bit deeper why people really are a key driver for growth in businesses.
Brilliant, thanks, Esther. Yeah, so in our line of work, we are all about growing businesses. So typically we'll work with the shareholders to try and increase the value of that business. That often means increasing the profitability. And when you're looking at any business, people are increasingly one of the largest costs that they have. That's not just true of professional services firms like our own. We're full of accountants, financial advisors and lawyers, but increasingly I'm seeing that across all different sectors that we work in. Manufacturing, engineering, leisure and hospitality have had huge issues with people over the last years, just largely because it's become a lot more burdensome to employ people and a lot more costly. So in the last 10 years, auto-enrollment has added pension costs to the cost of employing people. The rise of the minimum wage, specifically in our leisure and hospitality industries, has caused quite a big, profound impact. And we're always looking at productivity there and the metric between the cost of our staff cost over our turnover. And that's been a lot harder with living wage and minimum wage going up every year. We haven't really seen a significant rise in unemployment for a long time. And that, again, is meaning that the power that sort of goes between the employer and the employee has probably sat closer to the employee for quite a number of years now. And also inflation in the last few years, I've spoken to so many different clients, and they've all been struggling to pass on those inflationary costs that they're on their payroll that their staff are keen to have, and they're unable to pass them on to their customers. So all of these factors are contributing to an increase in the staff pool, and it really does matter what you do with it now more than ever. But looking at it from the other way also, the other thing that we look at when we're trying to help grow business is that the business owners themselves haven't got enough time on their hands. And one of the key things to sort of unlocking the potential is freeing up their time to think strategically and to work on the business. And to do that, you really need an engaged workforce. And I know this is a point, Julia, that you and I talk about quite a lot, is that without people, you don't really have a business. Yes, they're a large cost, and yes, they're increasing, but you really do need them to grow your business. And it's absolutely essential that you have them motivated. And so when I'm looking at a business there, we go through a set sort of format of how we grow the business. We're slightly different to other parts of the professional services world in that we don't charge based on our time, we charge based on our output by growing a business. And in order to do that, we need our people to be people within our client. We need them to be really, really motivated and highly productive. And so this is an area that we look at on a sort of daily basis, and we work very closely with Julia and her team, because they are really essential. And once we've got sort of the key outlines of the business running, getting the team motivated and incentivized, that's the way that we grow the businesses, really.
Thank you, James. And I mean, Julia, just sort of coming to you, how can sort of learning and development initiatives align with business goals and objectives?
It's a really good question, and thank you for asking. I think it stems from real-time, open, transparent communication across the business, where everybody is living and breathing the company value proposition and kind of understanding the direction the company is taking. You probably would say like North Star approach. And the workforce are knowing their individual contribution, making it very human-centric, like we do at Moore Kingston Smith. People at the centre of what we do. And L&D initiatives can align with business goals and objectives by identifying the specific skills and knowledge gaps within the business and designing training or coaching programs to address them. And by aligning the content and the objectives of the L&D initiatives with the overall goals of the business, employees can acquire the necessary skills and knowledge to contribute to the business success. So in a nutshell, it works hand in hand.
Well, I think we're really aligned on that as well. There's a sense of whenever we're looking at helping to grow business, it's all about, you start from, have you got a clear goal as a business owner or as a leader? I'm a governor of a primary school, so it's not necessarily exclusive to companies. It works in education as well, in the sense that have the leadership got a clear goal, and have you got something that you can take to your team? And that's something I think we sort of find that it sounds a little bit big corporate, and my client base is owner managed businesses. And so we're not necessarily saying you've got to sort of have like sort of 10 points or this is our vision goals. It's just sometimes very simple. This is what we want to do, because I know from working in a team and working with people, when they can see that someone's got a vision and they like it and they buy into it, immediately you're more engaged, you're more motivated, because you're aligned straight away. And so we also sort of think when you're sort of looking at setting out your goals, typically why you do something is really, really important. In our own team, we spend a lot of time sitting down together and just going, why do we do this? Why do we get out of bed every day? Why do we turn up a professional services firm? What is it that motivates ourselves? Because when you understand that about your team, it's a lot easier to work out what are the things that you need to do in order to get them to be the most productive. And in a professional services environment, what we're trying to do really is to get people sort of to work as effectively as they possibly can, to put a lot of work in, but to be really targeted in their output. And so understanding how they tick is a brilliant way of maximizing how they get out of it. And I'm sure, Julia, you know more than anyone that everyone's different in that regard.
Yeah, and we were saying earlier that productivity, that's a big word, right? But it means that people need to be present and have purpose. And when you do have a value proposition that everybody is striving towards and everybody's on the same page across the business, from the hierarchy across the business, because we're not in that type of leadership anymore, that sort of like, looking down, we're looking across, and people are really engaged and involved. That's when productivity happens. That's the magic.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we're doing a little qualitative survey amongst my media and marketing services business at the moment, and sort of doing interviews with very high performing agencies and sort of asking the business leaders what attributes are generating that high performance. And one of the ones I spoke to yesterday, he said, you know, it's really key for him is bringing the key senior leadership team along the journey, involving them in key important decisions, and that really motivates and engages them in the business. And you know, the happy byproduct of that is it naturally enhances their productivity. They're just so much more driven towards success, to do things better, and that sort of has a bit of a trickle down effect on other people as well.
100%.
I don't know whether, again, this is just because I deal with managed businesses, but I don't know whether a lot of people end up being quite protective about their business because it's their child, and they've spent a lot of their time developing it, growing it, and you get a little bit precious about it. And bringing other people into that can be quite a difficult one, because it also shows a little bit of your, I suppose, your vulnerability, because sometimes people look to business owners assuming that they've got all the answers, and bringing in a team can sometimes you feel, oh, I don't want to do that, because then people will sort of be like, oh, I don't, you know, they look to me to lead. But it's amazing. I think we really struggle to get effective business growth without the key management team buy-in, because they're the ones who are running around doing all the work and making it all happen. And it really allows the directors to really sit back and be a bit more strategic. And so we spend a lot of time doing initiatives around that to make them more productive and take work away from our directors.
Yeah, I mean, I think showing a little bit of vulnerability as a leader is no bad thing. I think people see that as authentic, actually, because no one has all the answers, do they? So, I mean, James, I mean, how can business leaders then sort of inform their workforce of their importance and their contribution to business success?
So I think the first thing is just to don't assume that what your communication actually is working. I spend a lot of time going into businesses and chatting all the way through, right the way, all the different teams they've done this quite a lot of times with clients, and it's amazing what you find out when you sort of go down the iceberg of ignorance, and what the business leaders think is being communicated, and they assume that all the goals and vision that they have is going down. It rarely is translating perfectly. Often it's there, but there's Chinese whispers and people aren't quite sure. And if you've got a great message, if you've got a great vision, if you've got a great company, shout about it and talk to your team about it, because generally they're interested. And we learn an enormous amount just by chatting to people within the business, and they tell us what they really like about the business, what they value. They talk about concerns when you're getting bigger, of protecting the culture as well. So one of the things when you're communicating, first of all, is just to do it, but don't assume that that your communication is being effective, and work with people, or have people in your business, or people like ourselves, to actually go and get that feedback from someone else. Because a lot of the time, people, when they speak to you directly, they say what you think they want you to say, as opposed to what they do. And so getting that insight to see whether people really understand your vision is really, really important. But the other thing we sort of we really focus on before we do anything with people is really understanding sort of the key drivers of the business, the 5 key sort of metrics that make the business go round, and make sure that the business, the team who are working in the business have visibility on that, and that they understand what success is and how they contribute it. One of our team went to a sort of professional service business, and one of the things that they had was on the wall was total sales, and it just said the sales number, and they just sort of asked to the team, what does that mean to you? And it's like, well, nothing really. It doesn't really we don't know whether that's good, whether that's bad. It has no implication on anything that we do. And so being able to communicate effectively how you derive value, how the business creates value, how you contribute to that, is really, really important. And once you've nailed that, then it's a lot easier to communicate to the team, because you can on a monthly basis just say, look, this is how we're doing, this is against our plan, we're doing really, really, really well. And that allows you to sort of increase productivity. And because when we've been going through a year, so you're 6 months, 9 months through the year, we look at it and we go, right, with the management team, we go, right, okay, we're on task, we're on target now. How do we get people to kick on for the last 3 months? How do we make sure that they don't drop off? And you can tailor your initiatives accordingly. And sat in one management meeting, we were just asking for ideas, and one of them just sort of said, let's just give everyone a day holiday that they can take at any point, because time is often a premium for these people. And that can be counterintuitively a really great way to improve productivity, is actually taking some time away from work, so that they are much more motivated and see that you're being valued. So there's loads of things that you can do in terms of communicating it, but just make sure that you know what you want them to do.
Great. Somebody's asked about culture in a business and how you embed this from a starting point if there isn't one there to begin with, or I suppose if there's one there to begin with that you don't like and you want to change, I guess might be equally as relevant.
You're really looking for, I think you're looking for leadership.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're first.
No, I was going to say, there's a lot of ways that you can encourage a culture. And having a sort of a coaching culture is something that I'm very passionate about when I'm speaking to various businesses. And when I spoke to James earlier, we have the same sort of alignment and agreement on that. It does start with the leadership, but it also starts with the people that the workforce within those businesses. So having a people survey to develop what good looks like, what are they wanting? What makes them tick? What's going to keep them engaged? What's going to retain them? Having a voice, and ensuring that the company is aligned. And we talked about, having goals and setting objectives, but most successful companies have a very strong value proposition whereby everybody knows what it stands for, and everybody knows the part they play. I could wax lyrical about this quite a lot. James, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, because so just from my background, I'm homegrown, so I joined the firm just over 10 years ago as a graduate trainee, and so my experience of the professional world is largely from within the firm, and it's definitely about leadership. So coming through the ranks, I know I can talk about many different examples, but one always sticks out, and it's one particular partner who Esther will know sort of very well from East Yorkshire, and he's absolutely brilliant at leading by example in terms of, in professional services world, you have to be quite disciplined in terms of putting your time down appropriately and managing your clients really well, being quite structured around how you bill. And what I learned from working with this particular partner was that he would always drive that from top. He would say, right, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to do it, and I expect you to do it. And he would never drop his standards. And so you found yourself raising your game to meet it. And the key thing is that everything's explained. You understood why you were doing it. You understood that, this is actually good for me. This is the right thing to do. And you haven't really, I never really had anywhere to go with that, because you're just kind of like, yeah, I get it. I understand it. You're not doing this pointlessly. It's entirely aligned with everything. And you know what? I've got to be better. And it's that sort of leadership, raising your game and making sure people know why you're doing things, so that they don't sort of go, well, that's just balmy. And that's something that you can really drive cultural change. It takes a little bit of time, but you do drive culture change. And I sort of see in his team, I see those sorts of characteristics crescendoing down, and it has a real positive impact, because everyone takes those on board and sort of absorbs them into their own sort of personality culture type, and sort of makes them a little bit stronger in that regard. They don't obviously become clones, but they just sort of understand the best practice and sort of make it work for them in their own environment.
James, don't you think, when leaders, get in a room together, we've got really high power roles, and we've got strategies, and we've got to make, businesses successful, but, it's walking the walk and talking the talk. And as you said, being visible to the workforce, leading by example. And as, Simon Sinek would say, leadership is about not about being just in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge, and that develops a culture in itself. So being involved with your workforce. End of.
Yeah, and taking them on that journey with you, 100%. Not having to drag them along, but them willingly, getting to a position where they willingly want to go on that journey with you. So Julya, what strategies can we implement to sort of enhance employees' skills and knowledge?
Another good question, thank you. There's several strategies one could use, such as conducting training workshops, providing online courses or e-learning modules. Offering mentoring and coaching programs, I think, are very, very important. Maybe organising job rotations or cross-functional projects. It's really good to see as part of someone's educational or, let's say, employee life cycle, they get to participate in another team or another department's work, and encouraging individuals to learn through self-paced learning platforms or communities of practice. So, yeah, quite a few options out there.
Yeah, and what about sort of customization of L&D programs to meet sort of the particular needs of an individual organisation, because they're all going to be different, aren't they?
100%, and one size does not fit all. We need to identify specific learning requirements of employees, and this assessment can include sort of surveys, interviews, focus groups to gather insights based on the findings. L&D programs can be tailored to target specific skills, knowledge and competencies required for employees to succeed in their roles within the organisation or the company. And remember, we need to be agile. Leaders need to stay connected. Embracing hybrid and remote working for some businesses is the new norm, even though I think in 2023, everybody expected to go back 9 to 5 based in the workplace, but that obviously is not the case. And we need to be creative in our approach and really to be ahead of the times and know what's out there.
I'll just pick up on a couple of those different points, because I certainly we utilize a lot of those when we're helping to grow businesses. I think management training is one that's really interesting, and it comes up time and time again with clients. I know that from my own experience internally, especially in the last five or so years, our learning and development team has grown enormously, and we invest a lot of time internally on management training. So the areas that are sort of non-technical, so particularly for us, it's around things like time management, providing difficult feedback, managing portfolios, and those are things that you learn on the job, but it's really useful. When we qualify, we have maybe sort of half a day every quarter where a group of similar people get together in a cohort and are provided with this training, and that's sort of twofold. It gives you the opportunity just to sit back and reflect on the way that you operate, and is there anything that you could be doing better, but also it brings you into contact with people who are doing similar sorts of jobs, and you naturally sort of have that sort of peer group there that help to really talk about. And this is something that I think our clients, well, I know our clients really value as well, because similarly, if they're sort of small business, you don't necessarily ever get that training. You end up just sort of, you might start on the shop floor and work your way up, and you learn through experience. And you know, just to go off a tangent, my wife works in fashion, and she started on the shop floor, and nothing can really sort of train you for when you're sort of Sunday morning someone turns up and is just sick all over because they've been out the night before, and you've got to try and deal with that and get customers in, and it's those sorts of things that you learn on the job. But having some good training on the back of that to complement everything that you're doing, it's really helpful. And that's a lot. I think I see the similar things with our businesses, where people just start working their way up, and no one ever sort of goes, you know what, do you actually need some training to how you deal with people, because you've learned just from all the war stories that you have of your life. But there are better ways of doing things, and that's somewhere where I think our L&D team are really helpful and can add a lot of value to our clients.
Esther, you did say about sort of how do we package it up and how do we bespoke it? You know, there is not a vanilla way of going in and saying, guess what, pick from this menu exactly what programs are designed for you, because that's a very, basic approach to training or coaching. So what we do with our clients is go and meet them, make the effort to go and meet them, understand what makes them tick, understand the DNA of their product, their purpose, their people, and do a thorough learning needs analysis. And that carves out a special package of, all the skill gaps and needs of that particular environment. And it is customized to help them succeed and help them have purpose, and obviously then drive that productivity factor. So there's lots of things that we can do to make it really special for them. But it does start with getting to know your client, getting to know your people, and really understanding what they need to succeed.
I think that's probably one of the other big changes we've sort of seen, Esther, over the past 10 years when we really started focusing on learning and development is that this gets drummed into us massively, is that not everyone is the same, and not everyone, maybe 10 years ago had a sort of approach where everyone would do exactly the same role, and that all of our managers and partners would look after trainees and be involved in the learning and development. And we've sort of evolved that and actually you know what, the people who want to do it and are proficient at it will build that more into their day job, and the people who may be through, because they've maybe potentially some people have been here for 20 years and are a bit tired of the constant repetitive of more people coming in who need training, who actually just want to focus on getting the work done. We look at their measurement of performance slightly differently, and that's something that getting people in the right position is really, really important with our clients. One of the things that our clients use quite often is sort of insights discovery, where they'll sort of profile their team and learn a bit about just trying to understand a little bit more how they operate, and then just try and make sure that their roles are aligned for what their sort of skills are. Sort of, you potentially don't want some sort of shy and retiring person in sales, potentially, as an example. Equally, if you're people in finance, you want someone quite analytical, attention to detail, looking for those sorts of areas. And that's something that you can really help to drive productivity, is looking at who your team are and what they're doing, and just making sure that they're focusing on the bits that are really in their skill set. Also identifying the gaps as well. If you've got some particular gaps in your business, then it's quite good for plugging those.
And James, we may be getting a little a bit more granular, but I mean, how do we go about setting productivity targets? Because again, that's going to need quite a lot of bespoking per person. There's not a one size fits all. And I guess, how might tech help us do that?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And the answer is obviously, every business is different, but most businesses have 5 things that they really really matter. So in our world, professional services, lawyers, financial advisors, all like the clients that we work with in that space, not just internally, but with all our clients.
Well, anyone selling time, I suppose. Actually,
absolutely.
There's a lot of marketing services clients on the call who also sell a lot of time.
Yeah, and we look massively at, then it's all about the value that you create based on the time that you invest. And it's not necessarily as hard and fast and cold-hearted as your profit or turnover per person, although that obviously is a key metric. It's also looking at the value of what you're generating, because for a lot of professional services firms, the value is created through making strategic alliances, building relationships. And so we look at metrics and how people are performing based on, are you doing what is in the strategic needs of the business? So financial advisory businesses we look at, and they're quite heavily regulated, and they have to spend a minimum amount of time with a client every year. And for them, it's really important that you choose the clients that are not going to consume the most of your time and not get the biggest return on them. And quite often people don't sort of realize, I think, within your portfolio of clients, is that there's always probably a bottom 20% that you're working with that actually are draining time and draining resource. And so when we're looking at metrics for how people are performing, you basically just look at the interaction there between your staff costs and your turnover. But that's true of a lot of professional services firms, but also of other businesses. You really gauge into what are the key things, the barriers to success. I know that we look at in a construction industry, we've looked at businesses where we looked at their win rate when they're looking at contracts. And what's quite typical, this is quite an interesting it's not necessarily about productivity itself, but it is a driver of productivity, is when people are busy, everyone always goes, let's hire someone else. Let's hire another person. We're really, really busy. And internally, you've heard that as well for the last 2 years. We were all like,
so it's a default answer, isn't it? Or the default perceived solution.
Hire more people. But actually, a lot of time it's actually to take a step back and look at what you're doing, and are you doing it the most effective possible way? So what we often do with our clients is actually to say, look, go and don't necessarily do it particularly laboriously. Don't go and do time sheets necessarily, but just write down the things that you're doing on every single day, maybe for a week, maybe for a month, and just see where you're spending your time. Because everyone, no matter what business, we all have the same. We only have 37.5 hours in the working week, although obviously a lot of people will work longer than that. And are you doing things that you shouldn't be doing? And if you are, we've got to work on trying to push those things down, because productivity is always killed, isn't it, by poor performance, poor management of people. But sometimes it's the inability of us, especially as, as business leaders, to let go and actually sort of trusting someone to do those sort of jobs. So when we're trying to measure productivity there, one of the things there we do is actually look at what you do, and is there a better way of doing it? Quite often there's a bit of technology there that can cut out what you want to do. And I'm still amazed that we're speaking to clients who don't spoke to a client on a new client on Tuesday who aren't aware of just very basic things like invoice recognition software that just means you don't have to type stuff in. And there are lots of different ways, and the difficulty, I think, for owner managed businesses in particular is, where do you go to talk about it? There are plenty of things that you can do to improve productivity in that regard.
Well, that leads nicely in. Oh, sorry.
I was going to go on. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that's what's so amazing about your team is that businesses can reach out to you and you can give them that sort of consultative advice. And that's very complimentary of what your team just does. And that's just the icing on the cake and how you can support them.
No,
it's just lovely just to talk to people, isn't it? Because I think when you're in a leadership position of, even if it's education, if it's in a company, it's really quite lonely, and you don't necessarily know where to go to help to get advice. And actually, sometimes just talking it through, there are a lot of off-the-shelf solutions that can get you more time in the day, and also take away a lot of the sort of the tasks that people don't really enjoy. Because I see more and more that happiness and sort of engagement is really, really, I don't know whether it's presumably always has been the case, but it's maybe because, as I said at the start, people are slightly more of a cost now. Making sure that they're happy and engaged and productive is just so important. And getting them to be able to do more of what they enjoy in their day job just breeds productivity without you even thinking about it.
I think that leads nicely into a couple of the questions that we've got come in, which is sort of around AI and tech. So somebody's asked, could AI potentially replace or influence the decisions that the senior leadership team of an organisation take, i.e. decision making and what ways a business should go? When you talk about invoice recognition software, I mean, there are lots of ways, and you talked about, the lower level jobs. I feel like AI could replace quite a lot of those low level jobs and actually incentivize people to be more satisfied in the work they do, because it's more meaningful, because it is less repetitive and less boring. Technology
is absolutely huge for us, because I always talk about our businesses. We want to be data informed, not data led, because typically where our clients have got to is because they've had a owner manager, entrepreneur who's had a pretty good gut instinct and has just had a nose for making it work. And what you're trying to do there is to not change that gut instinct, it's to inform it. Because if they have full visibility of everything that's going on, if they can see parts of their business are less productive than others, then they'll just make better business decisions on the back. You don't really want to take away that sort of instinct from them, because often sometimes the best decisions are just, you know what, I've just got a feeling that this is going to be right. I'm going to fly in the face of everything else. But yeah, it's really about making itself data informed. And I think absolutely right. So in terms of, there's a huge amount of stuff that AI and tech can do to help with productivity, because it just means that your team can be freed up to do the stuff potentially that they like. And ultimately, we're still seeing that relationships drive businesses. It's across many different sectors. You might have the best product, you might have the best service, but often we still see that the people who have the best relationships are the ones that win the work. And I don't see that changing anytime particularly soon.
I mean, just picking out a little bit from the next question, which is sort of tech and AI related, and sort of questioning whether AI was a good or bad thing for productivity. But, the bit that I'm picking out from there is, such as team integration, given a lot of people work remotely. Now, I think it's worth exploring whether we think that remote working whether that has affected productivity or not, and if it has, how we tackle that.
It's a good question, because there's a huge amount of businesses out there that are either remote or hybrid working, and I think it probably comes down to ensuring that you are connected to your teams and remain connected during that working week or working day. and how you get the best out of your teams from that aspect. We had a presentation actually only yesterday regarding our reward programs, and we breached that subject, and it's about individuals really just picking up the phone, going on that Teams call, ensuring that people are aligned to their objectives and their goals, and ensuring the work is met, but also having fun doing it. We're married to our jobs a huge proportion of the time, so it's really how you keep those people engaged, but also connect with your people and your teams, whether it's monthly or quarterly, face to face. Make sure you actually have that human connection as well. But it then probably goes down to more the matrix and measures of how you ensure the effectiveness of your productivity is measured. So we could probably
I mean, sort of coming on to that, I guess, what sort of metrics and measurements are there to sort of evaluate the effectiveness of sort of learning development initiatives and people's productivity?
Well, I think there's very many initiatives that we could use, such as participant feedback surveys, people surveys, pre and post training assessments, knowledge retention tests. It sounds very laborious, but it is quite fun. On-the-job performance evaluations, employee engagement surveys are very important, and tracking the application of newly acquired skills in the workplace, because we don't seem to do that. Once we've got those golden nuggets, how do we measure it? How do we track it? How do we see the good that's come out of it? And these matrix provide valuable insights on the impact of the L&D initiative and help determine their effectiveness in achieving the desired learning outcomes for the business. So there's quite a few out there.
And one of the things I think that's quite interesting in the last few years, is especially being in an office, is that there's been a little bit of a pivot from assessing people based on inputs to outputs, because prior to the pandemic, we all used to be in the office the same day, and you'd see people working hard, and you would assume, great, yes, James, he's here working really, really hard. But that's not necessarily a measure of whether I'm working effectively. That's just might be I'm just not very good at getting my job done in the working day. But when you can't see people, then you start to look at obviously what the output they're producing, and then you sort of go, well, is that commensurate with what I'm expecting? So there's a little bit of a change there. And I think one of the things I think is really, really important is that if you're going to do anything with people, just make sure you follow through with it. There's a reason why you do it, and that you make the most of it. I think, Julia, you and I have talked about this before, in the sense of the worst thing to do is walk people up the hill of a staff engagement survey and then just go, yeah, interesting, chuck it away. People get very disaffected very, very quickly. And so anything that you do, make sure it's really, really targeted. You understand the value of doing it, and it becomes something that you find really, really valuable, because otherwise it's just it possibly does more damage than good when you get people excited about something and then just let them down.
I think fortune's in the follow-up, isn't it, at the end of the day? And if you're putting together a strategy or an initiative or a feedback survey, whatever it might be, you follow it up, and then you make it a habit, because if it's good, you want to embed it within your organization. And as we've said at the very beginning, our people are the core of our business. This is what we get out of bed for. We want to work with some really great people and enjoy the work that we're doing. And that's the most important thing.
I think it comes back to that point James was making earlier about sort of making sure that you explain to people why they're important to the business and why their contribution is really, really valuable. And I think if people buy into that, they sort of naturally become more productive, because they will want to do a good job. And I think also giving people more responsibility sometimes makes them rise to the occasion and become more productive, because people value being trusted, they value responsibility. So we are getting near our witching hours. I think we've maybe got time to squeeze in one more question, James, if you don't mind. We've got an upcoming election round the corner, not too far away. Do you anticipate any changes in the upcoming general election that might affect anything we've been talking about?
Not particularly. I think there's always always concerns. There is concerns if you're from an employer's point of view that Labour are talking about moving the dial even further towards protecting employee rights. But I think most business owners probably feel that in the last 10 years there's been so much
stuff that they've had to deal with anyway, that they probably they're burning in the fiery pits of hell anyway. What's another couple of degrees that makes it even makes it any harder? And particularly just the experience, I mean, leisure and hospitality, same with education, in the sense when you've had all these changes to casual workers, and it gets changed and it gets changed back, and it's just been exhausting. So really the landscape is that it's difficult to, I think it's not easy employing people. It's not easy in terms of obviously you as an employee, you've got to provide a lot. I think working remotely, it's a lot harder to train as well, and that's made it quite a hard landscape. And it all just points towards the same thing, that the importance of productivity isn't going anywhere really. This is something that we're going to be, regardless of what happens on July the 4th, productivity is going to be absolutely massive for us in terms of how we continue to grow businesses.
Super, thank you both very much. So I think we will call that an end with 2 minutes to spare back in everyone's diary. Thank you everyone for attending this morning's webinar. Please do fill our feedback survey in. It's super useful for helping us to shape other webinars in terms of topics and timings. And remember, this session was recorded, so again, do share with any peers or colleagues who were unable to make it today. It will be uploaded onto our website. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.